poll by Convention of States Action in partnership with the Trafalgar Group shows nearly 2/3 of likely voters support Article 5 Convention of States. Over 65% of likely voters support a convention for proposing constitutional amendments, focusing on term limits, spending restraints, and limits on federal government's authority. This crosses party lines. 81% of Republicans, 63% of independents, and 50% of Democrats expressed their support. Less than 17% of all respondents are opposed. What's even more incredible is the crosstabs. They revealed that there is very strong support among college-aged adults and 35 to 44-year-old adults. So think of parents that still have children within the home. But there's strong majority support among every age bracket. Furthermore, strong majorities of all ethnicities support Convention of States, including 60% of Hispanics.
There is nothing wrong with your screen. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling the messaging in this transmission. We will tell you the topics you may speak about. We will remove any speech we deem unfit. We will identify and protect you from all that is evil. You need only put your full trust in us. We are the government, and we are here to help.
All right, everyone. So my apologies for yesterday. I don't know what the heck happened yesterday, but my audio seems to be working fine now. So if there are any issues that you see coming through, please, by all means, let me know. I just want to make sure that, if everything sounds good. You see, Jack bailed on me again today, so I swore to myself I wasn't going to do this again without somebody here to check it, but I already put the invite out, and then we realized he wasn't going to be on, so here I am. So that being said, the information that I wanted to cover, it's just too important for me to not come on again. So I just felt like, even if Jack can't be here, I needed to do this. The good news is, it looks like we've rectified our issue with the Facebook event stream. So prior, for those of you who have been following, we'd put out an event, people would go to the event, and then we'd end up streaming on a separate link because our software was breaking its link with Facebook. And I finally, after multiple rounds of support and failed attempts, seemed to have figured it out. So that being said, if you haven't already, make sure you share this, subscribe, follow, wherever you're watching from, whether it's Rumble, subscribe, YouTube, subscribe, and click that bell, Facebook, follow and like, and make sure you're clicking all the thumbs ups and all that commenting, because the more engagement a post gets, the better its distribution organically, which is really the only way we get distributed. So we're appreciative to all of you for being out there, and I want to get into some of these COS topics. So with respect to recent news in COS, and I want to get into with respect to recent news in COS, I showed it in the video, in the intro video, but if you missed it, what we were saying is that there was a poll that went out, and the poll was very interesting, and I have it up, and I can actually plop it onto the screen here. Just give me a moment. Here we go. And up it goes. And this is a poll done by the Trafalgar, and it was done in obviously in partnership with COS. That's who they hired to do the poll. But the poll showed what we already know. The poll showed what, to us was already obvious, and that's there's cross the aisle support for Convention of States. So this is what you're seeing right now is just the breakdown of it. The margin of error, 3%, which is pretty standard. Now, here's the first category. This is the general category. 2/3 of the American voter are in support of COS. Okay, 2/3. So if you if you just wrap your head around that, because this has become, to a lot of people, a partisan issue. And they've been pretending it's a partisan issue. They've been, acting like, oh, it's all Republicans. It's not, the Democrats are always, and truth be told, in these legislatures, a lot of Democrats are in opposition. All right. But not the voters. Okay. And and the voters are what matters. Right. So it's what matters in the spirit of what we're doing, right? Obviously, we're going to need those people when it comes time to get this across the finish line. But we do need those Democrats out there to start petitioning their state legislatures. It's becoming now. I'm going to get into a little bit more of the breakdown here. So here's the Democrat breakdown. So half of all Democrat voters, all right, and this goes to what I had been saying, that just because every Marxist is a Democrat doesn't mean every Democrat is a Marxist, right? And you can bet the Marxists do not want convention of states. So this is a good sign, because this means, the numbers that I had been theorizing are somewhat accurate, where we're looking at this and saying, okay, well, 50%. So that means, obviously there could be some who just aren't, and there's more than 50%, because every one of them are not a Marxist. You can't be a Marxist and support convention of states. You just can't be. So in the end, you figure there's probably some who aren't Marxist, but just, don't understand convention of states, don't know what it is, believe the Publius Holders and John Birch's societies of the world. So it means that a good portion of the Democratic Party is not sold into this Marxism, and that it is all media and social media and mainstream media pushing with a loud voice, making it appear, you see it in the schools, you see it in Hollywood. It gives the impression that it's representative of society, but it's not. It's not. These people are a minority with a very, very, very big microphone. Okay. And this goes further, though. So the Republican base, you expect Republicans being more constitutionally minded would be higher, but I'll explain why that's cool in a minute. 63% of independents, all right, are in support of convention of states. And here's the question up top: would you support a convention of states to meet and propose constitutional amendments focusing on term limits for Congress and federal officials, federal spending restraints, and limiting the federal government to its constitutionally mandated authority? 63% of independents are in agreement. Okay. Now, age participation. Okay. So from 25 and higher made up the majority. They did get some in the 18 to 24 bracket, but 25 and higher made up the majority. My age group actually made up the largest amount. But that being said, from a party affiliation or from an ethnicity standpoint, it's pretty representative of the population, right? So it's pretty. I mean, last I saw, blacks made up about 12 to 14% of the population. Hispanics were around the same area, so it's about the same. Party participation, though, look at this: more Democrats than Republicans were in this survey. All right, we're in this poll. So just to put that in perspective, right? It's like you would think if they were trying to skew this, they'd have more, knowing that 81% Republicans, because the last poll they took was like 70 something percent Republicans, and the independents were still in the 60s, and the Democrats were around 50 to 55. So they took it again now, and it's coming up with similar numbers, a little more on the little extra Republican, a little less. Like a 2 or 3% less Democrat. Still Democrats over 50%, though. All right. And more Democrats polled. Show me how many Marxist polls go out that have more Republicans polled than Democrats. They don't exist. CNN, I don't think, has done one like that in friggin' 30 years. All right. So gender participation, about 50-50, a few more women than men. And I'm breaking this down because I know the skepticism of people saying, well, what was the breakdown? Was it all just, this? So I want to full disclosure here to do that. So let me see what else we got. So ethnicity, So 76% of the Asians polled were in support, 62% of blacks were in support, almost 60% of Hispanics, 66% of the whites polled, and other was that I guess every other nationality was 67%. So everybody in the high 60s, in everybody almost 60 or above. Again, that's a super majority. By Senate standards, that's a super majority, right? So significant numbers, and really, it tells the story that we already knew. So I'm not even surprised by this. It's just I feel like there are people who may be, and I want those people to see, I want them to see that this is not a partisan issue, that there are issues out there that are big enough that we all agree on them. And the issues at Convention of States for this movement, they are big enough that we all agree on them. And honestly, fixing those three major topics goes a look, there's no silver bullet. It's not going to fix everything, but it's going to fix a lot. It's going to create a serious shift back to liberty from this top-down madness that we've been dealing with. And now there's something else that I wanted to go over regarding Convention of States, and it's Rudy Giuliani. Now, nobody is a bigger Rudy Giuliani fan than I am. All right, nobody. I'm as big a Rudy Giuliani fan as it gets. There might be some who are equals, but I lived in New York City when Rudy Giuliani came in, and I lived through the mayors that came before him, the Mayor Koch, Mayor Dinkins, and I watched the cesspool that was New York City and Times Square being known for its hookers and peep shows. And then I saw it after Rudy Giuliani. And what was cool about the way I saw it was I was in college at the time, and I actually came home for the summer and noticed drastic changes. So I came back to New York after being in college for that semester, and I went to get on the A train. The 80th Street Hudson stop was my stop, and it's right on Liberty Avenue, and I ended up going onto the train, and I was like, this is crazy. This train doesn't smell like piss. Huh, that's odd. Then I kept going, put my token in, went upstairs, went up the platform. I was like, wow, it still doesn't smell like piss. Like I didn't know what that platform was like, not smelling like piss. Like my entire life, that platform smelled like piss and was covered with graffiti. And the next observation was just that. I was like, where's all the graffiti? And then the train shows up clean. Now, you could Google pictures of New York City in the 1980s to get an idea, like New York City subway, New York City trains in 1980s. And what you'll see are trains that are absolutely covered from top to bottom. Inside, you walk in the train, the seats are all tagged up. If you wanted to write your name on a New York City subway train, you would have to struggle to find space to do it. I mean, that's how covered these trains were. So when I saw it come in clean, I didn't even make the association immediately with Rudy. I just was like stunned and was just blown away by the whole thing. So, but eventually it became clear that Rudy was the one responsible for this. And this is decades. I mean, New York, it was where it is now, just a lot dirtier. They haven't had the time yet to really tag up and do all the graffiti at the moment, but they'll get there. They'll keep electing these people. They'll get there. And in the end, watching him transform that city, and it was about 2.5 years or so after he took over, maybe his third year, that New York City was declared the safest large city in the world. I mean, it was absolutely miraculous what he had done. And all this after taking down the five godfathers after as a DA, as New York City's district attorney, before he got elected mayor, which is why he got elected mayor, because people were so done with the crime. So so that's my little lead into Rudy Giuliani and where, because I know now today, a lot of these dootaroos out there are trying to make Rudy sound like he's crazy and he's got all this nuts, he's a nut and this and that. I see these articles in all the Marxist publications like the fall of Rudy Giuliani. I'm like, there's no fall in Rudy Giuliani. You people are insane. You're insane. He's one of the greatest leaders of my lifetime. When it comes down to saying you're going to do something and then getting it done, there's nobody better. I mean, he started going on tour after he left. People were hiring. Singapore hired him as to how to reduce crime, and crazy results from that man. And now, just recently, Gary Brenner, the media director for Convention Estates, has gone and called in just as a caller, from what I understand. If there's any of my COS peeps out there, you could fill me in if I get this wrong. But Gary Brenner just called in. If I listened to the conversation, if I remember the conversation he had on the COS video correctly, he was just thinking to himself, like, why don't I just call in and just talk Convention Estates? And this is similar to something that we were saying people should do a while ago. Was like, like all our grassroots organizations like should be making teams and systematically calling these different radio stations on these nationally syndicated programs and just having a conversation about COS. And every time you do, thousands and thousands, in some cases, 1 million people or more will hear about Convention Estates. And if you do that in cycle, but I don't want to get into that. So I want to get into Gary Brenner because it was great what he did. Now, I'm going to play a clip for you of Gary Brenner actually calling into Rudy Giuliani's show and making the case. Now, I got this clip from Convention Estates Project YouTube channel. They edited it. So I heard them say it was like a 10-minute clip. I don't know where to get the whole clip from, so I'm going to go with their edit. But nonetheless, I have some comments I want to make about it when I'm done. So I'm going to go ahead and just play it. And it's kind of stunning that Rudy Giuliani, he says he got a lot of literature on it, but I don't think he really knew much about this before Gary called.
Believe in the Constitution, Mr. Mayor, then we should believe in the whole Constitution, including using the whole Constitution. We have to do this not instead of what we've been doing, but in addition to what we've been doing. And the people, Mr. Mayor, are already doing this in an organization and a movement named Convention of States. Mr. Mayor, the legislatures of 19 states have already passed uniform resolutions to do this based on 3 subjects: term limits on Congress and federal officials, fiscal restraints on the federal government, and limiting the power and jurisdiction of the federal government.
This is something I have gotten a great deal of literature about, and I've had many talks with some of the same people you're talking about right now, and I have an open mind about it. But can I tell you my reservation? And maybe it's not a correct one, but I'm afraid we might change it the wrong way.
They gave us 2/3 of the states required to have a convention, which is now 34 states. They put the ratification requirement at 3/4, which is 38 states. That's a super majority, which only amendments with wide, broad support will pass that high requirement to become ratified.
And would like to hear a lot more about it. There's no question we've got to do something to save our country.
Sir.
And maybe this is it. Let me take a look at it. Okay, Gary?
All right. So, I mean, I'm stoked that he's going to look into it now, but I'm like stunned a little bit that he didn't really seem to know much about it. And I'd be intrigued to hear the rest of that conversation, because I'm sure Gary Brenner knows about it, but I'm more concerned. I'm more interested. I'm not concerned, but interested to see Rudy's reactions to different statements that were made, because, look, Rudy Giuliani getting on board, could be significant. That could be, even though the Marxists all label him this and that, doesn't matter. The Marxists aren't going to be supporting this anyway. It's clear we're going to have to do this without them. This is all about Americans. The Marxians, the Martians, the Marxists aren't going to be helping us here. So, but like Rudy, the circles that Rudy runs in, and having the history of being an attorney, I feel good about it because I feel like I got the feeling from that conversation that Rudy is not just taking it seriously, but he's going to start reading the history on it. He's going to start looking into it. He's going to start, you know, he's going to start seeing what it's all about and start hearing all sides of the argument. It gave me the impression that whoever he heard it from before knew very little about it, and kind of, gave him the wrong impression, and kind of gave him that fear that he mentioned, right? Because we've all been there. We've all had that fear of convention estates when we first heard about it. And you start hearing all that craziness, and then you start reading history, and then you start looking into it, and then you start seeing the precedent, and then you start understanding it, and you start realizing this is the way. And it's not until you get past that you really become a super advocate, because it's that powerful. And once, for those that understand the Constitution, and unfortunately, I think that we may be outnumbered these days, at least when it comes to the younger generations. But in the end, when you know the Constitution, and you see what the power of convention of states can do, and the sweeping changes that it can make. Okay. For all those who think that our Constitution is being ignored now, it's not. It's not being ignored. I mean, they're trying to usurp it. They're not ignoring it. They know what it says. They're trying to do things to undermine it. But thus far, bruised, battered, and scarred, the Constitution is still standing firm, and is still the greatest thorn in the Marxist side that has ever been written. And we plan to keep it that way. And with some very simply written, simple language amendments to handle, we're not going to make 15-page amendments, right? The reason the Second Amendment is so strong is because it's so simple. It's so simple and so sweeping. The rights to bear arms shall not be infringed. For you truly have to be an activist judge to see that any differently. And yes, we do have the threat of activist judges. We have 3 of them on the court right now who are more than willing to usurp the Second Amendment and throw it out because they believe in this ridiculous living document nonsense where, oh, well, it's just written by old people. And if they knew today's society, it doesn't matter. They don't need to know today's society because there's a process. So today's society can follow that process and change it. These issues are issues that this movement is interested in. But if somebody wants to try and get rid of the Second Amendment, they can try and get 34 states on board with that. They'll fail miserably, but they could try. There's a process. It's not the judge's place. It's not the judge's place to make that decision. It's not the judge's place to sit there and say, well, even though the founders said this, we could assume that today they would think differently because they were looking at muskets and they were apparently too stupid to know guns would get better, even though they got they got much better even in their own lifetime. But that they wouldn't know that guns would get more advanced. And you know what? Basically, it's just nonsense. And Ginsburg was this way. Scalia beat her up for it, and she was this way. But in the end, my point that I'm making is that the amendment was written very simple, and it's very difficult, and that makes it very difficult to misinterpret, right? If we write an amendment 1 or 2 sentences long saying that the Commerce Clause doesn't, apply to everything, doesn't give carte blanche. I will word it correctly, but keep it in a sentence or two that just says, the federal government should not be meddling anything in interstate commerce. Just get it out of commerce altogether. And if we want to let it in for certain things to settle disputes between states and things like that, that's fine. But say that clearly, because the fact that it wasn't said clearly and it was assumed allowed the Supreme Court to open carte blanche to just about anything on earth. And here we got Minnesota COS action, 38 states to pass. Actually, yeah, so you got it right. 34 to call, and then I should have did it in the other order. 34 states to call the convention, 38 states to pass. Okay, and when we say pass Article 5, what they mean is pass the amendments that get proposed. So 34 states passed their resolutions. You can read your state's resolution, whether it's passed yet or is still pending. If they haven't written one, then it'll say they haven't written one, but we have it all listed by state with the links to the resolutions by state on our website. It's www.thepatriotthinktank.com/COS. And you'll see a list there. There's also a link on that page to sign the petition for your state, where Convention of States will send a letter on your behalf to your representative, to your local representative. But to go back to it, 34 states passed their resolutions. Once they're passed, Congress shall call the convention. Okay, Congress shall call, not might call the convention, not, will consider calling a convention. They shall call the convention. All right. And then once that convention is called, the states will select delegates. They can select as many delegates as they want. All right. So maybe Wisconsin selects 5 delegates and Massachusetts selects 12 delegates and, Texas selects 10 delegates. They pick as many as they want. All right. But in the end, all their delegates combined are worth 1 vote. All right. So the reason in picking more than 1 delegate is the same as the original, as the constitutional convention that took place, as opposed to a convention for calling amendments. The constitutional conventions that each state sent multiple delegates as well, because you want thinkers in different areas of expertise. No one person knows everything. So you want people, maybe some economy experts, some economic experts involved with the fiscal restraints. You may want, some historians involved for government overreach, etc. But that's the reason. So once they all go to convention, it's a simple majority to approve the language of the proposals. So they'll sit down. They've got the topics in front of them from their states, and then from there they will start to hash it out. And people started making it sound sinister if they did this in private, like if it was secret meetings. I personally prefer that it be so. Now, it probably won't be. It will likely be nationally televised and become a complete poop show as far as people playing to the cameras and things like that. But I personally would rather have these people go into a room and just have it out. And just have it out and speak honestly and freely without worrying about how the media is going to interpret what they say day in and day out and day in and day out, because this is too important to be playing that kind of game. Either way, they're going to come out with proposals, and those proposals have to get passed by 38 states. So the end result of whatever goes on behind those, and they, I don't care if they record it and then show the recordings later, maybe, or something. Now, even then, they'll be playing to the cameras. I love the days before cameras were in Congress. I love those days, because what I see on those cameras is nonsense. It's grandstanding. It's speaking to the camera. It's nonsense. The movie Lincoln, for those that watched it, was a great movie. I thought it was pretty solid to historical fact. They added in a little bit of drama here and there, but the facts were pretty on point. And the way that they behaved in Congress, though, was what I really appreciated about that movie. And because me, I always find the thing that nobody else appreciates and then point it out, like this is the guy jumps off a building after eating lunch, and I'm like, what kind of sandwich was it, right? Like, but in the end, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, all right, so these guys are yelling at each other, insulting each other. They're, but there's clearly some sort of professional camaraderie, but they were clearly, having it out, which you can't do on camera. You just can't do it. And so in the end, what really happens is nothing goes on the floor anymore, and it all goes on behind the scenes. sorry, that was Jack. I told him to I told him to watch it so that he can if I come on solo, because when you're solo you don't have anybody to tell you if your audio goes out or if something's going bad, and the viewers generally will just dial out, they don't tell you. So I had to figure it out, so I told him to just tell me if it did, but he tells me everything's going okay, so I'm assuming it is. So to get back to it, keep the cameras out, but they'll probably be in there, right? So they come out of there. It takes 26 states, right? So again, each group of delegates is one vote, right? 26 states have to agree to the language on the proposals. All right. The same way, well, it's not this. Anyway, so 26 states have to approve. Once they approve, the proposals go back to the state legislatures. Now, Congress does have a say here in whether or not it's the state legislatures or if it's another convention that they call through the states to do this. Now, it doesn't really matter because it's all still controlled by the states. So it will likely be the state legislatures that they choose. But even if they don't, the state legislatures can select themselves as their representatives for the convention. State legislatures are still in control of this process. All right. And so then it goes to the states. 38 states, a supermajority of states, right? 3/4 of the states have to agree on any amendment that gets ratified. All right, which is the safety net. All right, nothing gets passed with that kind of general consensus unless there's agreement amongst everyone. Okay, 38 states is a lot of states, right? Only 13 are needed to put the whole thing to bed. And I'll be honest with you, when I talk about, I've said it once, I say it a million times, and I play the Scalia quote. If you want to see it, let me know. I'll play it again, where Antonin Scalia in the 70s was in a debate before he became a Supreme Court justice, but was still a very highly respected legal mind. There was a debate about whether or not a convention of states should be called, and he was pro-convention the entire thing. But one thing that he said that I just absolutely been saying, when I heard him say it, I felt 100% validated, was that even if they don't ratify, even if the states decide they're not going to ratify them, it's still a win. Like the idea that we get through the process and the procedure goes through, and that the debate about what is this, what can it go crazy? Is it going to go off the rails? Are they going to rewrite the Constitution? Are they going to do this? Are they going to do that? Like all that nonsense, the Publius Holders and the John Birch Society coconuts, all those dootaroos, they're done. There's no more argument from them. They're finished. Kaput. Nothing. They got nothing. Right? And that's huge, because what that does is, even if we don't get everything we want, and I'm sure some will get ratified. I mean, these delegates are not going to go in with the intention of bringing back stuff that's going to get laughed at. All right. So, I imagine California will send delegates to stir stuff up. New York, et cetera, will send delegates to stir things up. How you doing, Sheila? Good to see you on. Good to see you on. We're deep in the COS talk right now, deep in the COS talk. So, and I just went through, if you missed it, Sheila, I just went through those polling numbers that had come out showing, 2/3 or so, slightly under 2/3 are in full support of convention of states, of the voters, right? And so, but to get back to the process, it's just about, whether or not they ratify them all. I mean, I'd love to see, I have a laundry list of things under these three topics that I would love to see get done. And repealing the 17th Amendment, repealing the 16th Amendment. If you don't know what the 16th Amendment is, folks, if you're not, and I understand, but if you don't, it's income tax. Okay. They added that amendment because it was ruled over and over and over again to be completely unconstitutional to tax the income of American citizens. And so the progressives waited, and they tried, and they did their own move for a constitutional amendment, and they did it through Congress. But nonetheless, they petitioned, and eventually got everything in a place where they could pass it, and it changed the entire course of this country. The entire course of this country. It's where all the wealth sharing began. Okay, prior to that amendment, all right, they were not able to control corporations the way they do now. They were not able to, like, with all this ESG nonsense and all this garbage, like they just simply didn't have the power to do those sorts of things prior to the income tax. Okay, and so that's something I would love to see go away. Go back to a consumption tax, tariffs, basically, where you control your tax spending. You control your tax spending, and of course, a limit, a cap would need to be set for that. Okay, but in the end, with cap or no cap, hold on, I'm sorry, someone. I always get my phone calls right during the broadcast, but they would set a cap, and that would be that, right? And then the 17th Amendment, if you don't know, if you're not aware, okay, if this is something that's new to you, we shouldn't be, and we never did, elect our senators. Now, I've talked to, it bugs me out how many people don't know it, but like that, they amended the Constitution, all right? And this was an incredibly progressive move to do. And the reason that they did it was not to empower the public. That's how it was sold, right? And if you don't know anything about how these things work, you think to yourself, well, how are we less in power how could we be less in power if we're electing them directly? Well, before, okay, and the way that this system was designed was that the most powerful bodies in this country are the state legislatures. Okay, it was not the federal legislature. Remember, that is the state's child, right? So the state created this child in the federal government. The federal government is not the parent, and the state legislatures are the daddies and the mommies, right? And they're the ones handing in the discipline, right? And in the end, there has been no discipline, right? They let them run amok and let them go crazy. But people don't realize that. And the way it used to work was that the Senate, the state legislatures appointed senators. Why? Why is that better than electing them directly? Well, let me give you an example, because there are plenty, but I'll give you one that makes current sense right now in the current day. All right. Liz Cheney gets elected to office, right? And she gets elected to office on whatever her platform was. I'm sure it was, I'm going to vote for low taxes, blah, 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 the whole Republican platform. And then she goes rogue. She joins the kangaroo court of this January 6th committee. She starts bashing Trump like a freaking psycho. Like, even when he's not doing anything, like, she just bashes him. Like, she just goes nuts. Mitt Romney lost his scruples too, right? But these guys now are stuck there for 6 years, okay? And the people have no say. Once you elect them, they don't need to answer to you anymore, all right? And that's bad. That's not a good thing, all right? Without the 17th Amendment, all right, and without electing them directly, right now, the people who voted for Liz Cheney could be going to their local senators and their local house and demanding a recall and demanding that they pull her and appoint someone else. The same for Mitt Romney. All right? They don't like that. And the reason why the legislatures are the ones that were given all this power is because they're the closest to the people. Okay? Your state representatives are a few miles away from you, no matter where you are in the country. Right? If you're really in the sticks, all right, maybe they're a little further. But they're local. They're drivable. And when you get there, when you call them, when you write them, they read them. I gave that quote, with I should probably play it because it's relevant. There was when Mark Meckler was in the and I forget which one it was, but he accidentally he was mentioning in passing. He was saying, talking to the state Senate, saying, "Well, you guys do politics for a living. I travel for a living." And the senator quickly stopped him and was like, "I'm a farmer." And you can see, like, laughingly, and it was joking. It wasn't like an angry exchange, but he was just reminding him, like, I don't do politics for a living. Like, that's not what that's not what state legislatures generally do. There are a few who are trying to get into the federal government, and those people are trying to make a career out of it. One that won't be accessible once we pass term limits, right? But that's the difference. And here's the exchange, just so you.
You do politics for a living, and politics are.
I'm a farmer. I'm a farmer.
How about not for a living?
I'm a statesman. Senator Craig and I are statesmen.
I appreciate that. You are, actually. I see that a lot in state legislators.
Yeah, and you see how he says that, right? And then we've got Minnesota COS action. Since there are two bodies in all, but one state legislature, it takes 76 legislative bodies to pass, 23 to vote no to stop an amendment. A very high bar. Yes, absolutely, a very high bar. And that one is Nebraska, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, Minnesota action. I think the one is Nebraska. They just, I remember we were just waiting for that, and I was like, couldn't figure out how this process is working, and I'm like hanging on, just dying to see Rita Peters come out and give us the breakdown to see how that worked. But then she came out one day and said, like, this one only has one body, so they vote 3 times, and it was interesting to watch that. So and they did. They voted 3 times and they passed it. I'm pretty sure it was Nebraska that did that, but nonetheless, so that's the process. And what do we stop by doing it? Okay, like how dire is this that it gets done? Like, it's always been a big issue, right? They started this in 2013. It's always been a big issue. It didn't matter who, and you say, what? Why would they do this in 2013? Like, but then, Trump was president, so we did. Yeah, we need it then too. It's not about who's president, folks. It's not about who's president. It's about the government and the way it runs. The debt didn't slow down one bit when Trump came in. Right? Not one bit. I'm not blaming Trump for that. There's nothing a president can do. There's nothing. I don't care who the president is. They can make it worse, but they can't make it better. And that's the reality of it. The system is structurally broken, and there need to be hard checks, shackles put in place to the adult needs to enter the room. The bottom line. The whole idea that we could send $40 billion to Ukraine, a war which we instigated, and then send $40 billion there while our people are having a hard time feeding their families with inflation, gas prices, etc. We're how do you make inflation worse? Spend money. Print more money. That's how, and it's all printed because we far surpassed anything that we're going to bring in. We far surpassed that. So in the end, yeah, we operated $1 trillion deficit a year, regardless of loopy stuff like that. So, like, in the end, guys, this is the path, and this is what we're here for. And I want to get into a little bit now. And Minnesota COS actually says 13 to vote no. Yes, 13 to vote no. And the reality of the matter is, one of the biggest reasons and why there's such a sense of urgency around this right now is because of what's going on with WEF. And I wanted to say, and I tried to get this out yesterday, but I had no audio, so everyone just dialed out, and it was fun. It was fun to talk to no one and, well, talk to myself, right? I heard it. But in the end, I was trying to get across the point that I'm about to start diving back into Great Reset material because it's now, they're at it again and they're moving forward. And I read through the WEF website and it's part of the reason why there's like no doubt in my mind that this globalist thing is, so I'm at a point now where if you think that the globalist movement is conspiracy theory, you're the crazy one. Like, that's where my head is now. Like, I'm no longer considering it. I'm no longer thinking about it. They're telling you. Like, if you read through the word salad in the WEF's website, and that's what it is, word salad, they tell you outright what it is they're trying to do. And what I decided to do, because there's so much information in there. I mean, when I go through that website, it's like, well, and I'm going through it like, all right, how do I convey this to my audience? And I'm like, well, it would be like a 9-hour video, and I wouldn't even get through a piece of it. Like in the end, we got to get into modern monetary theory. We've got to get into digital currency. We've got to get into food supply. There's so many things that they're moving into to take over, and they tell you, they explain it all to you. Okay. And that's what drives me nuts. Is like, how do I get this across? So I'm going to put out a series that's basically going to be all about walking you through the WEF website. And I'm going to take it in small pieces so people can digest it and then relate it to what's going on today. For example, there's a document that they put out, which they considered a research study in 2020, where they were already planning to set up these food hubs, these food innovation hubs, to handle the food crisis that hasn't happened yet and is now happening. Right. And for those that don't know what's going on in the Netherlands, right? The Netherlands, so the Dutch farmers there have been protesting for weeks now, and they're being asked, they're using climate change. Okay. So it's always climate change. It starts to make sense now that they're coming clean about stuff and trying to sell it to you. It starts to make sense what they've been doing this whole time. Right. They raised a couple generations, 2, maybe 3. And even infected with the idea, some of the older generations, that the climate is so bad that it's inevitable that we're doomed. And that if we don't act now, we'll all be dead in 12 years, right? It's always 12 years. And then the next 12, right? Funny how that works, where 12 years is right around the time that it takes to get to the next generation, right? So we've got all these kids now who are becoming adults, who absolutely believe, right? And imagine you were a believer. Maybe you are. I don't know. But imagine you believe that climate change is such a threat that we're going to die. Your child, the world's going to be over if we don't listen to them. If you believe that, you will let them do whatever they want. And you will pray, maybe, but that'll be it. Which the irony in praying at that point would be hilarious, since these people are all demonic. But in the end, that would be the only thing you could do. Because what they're doing in the Netherlands, so they're using climate change and saying, well, nitrates are bad for the environment, right? Funny how everything that's cow farts are bad for the environment. Everything that gives them control of the food supply is bad for the environment, right? And so because these nitrates are so bad, because they're so devastating, right, then they have to cut them in half in the Netherlands. Now, cutting them in half, nitrates are used in fertilizer, okay? And it should not go unnoticed that Russia was the second largest supplier of fertilizer in the world, okay? If you're still trying to figure out why the hell that whole war went down or is going down, it's not that difficult to figure out at this point. But now the farmers in the Netherlands are screwed because they can't operate. They can't yield crops at a profitable rate at 50%. All right. And you say to yourself, well, that's, that if the nitrates are that bad, then it's okay that they can't do that, because in the end, we got to save the world. And this is where you start to smell the BS all over the place, right? You start to smell it. And I'm trying to fish through a document. I have it highlighted on my other computer, but I didn't plan on getting this deep into it today. But they tell you like what the unfortunate consequences of what they're trying to do with their food innovation hubs. They tell you what those unintended consequences are, and those unintended consequences. This was in a document written in 2020. Okay. And I'm going to cover this in future videos as I do this series, because I'm trying to scroll through it now, but it's too hard to do, produce, and talk. So I'm going to let it go for now. But in the end, they tell you in the document, right? And what's the name of it? I could give you the name of the document at least. That's fair. You could look it up yourself and do some reading. It's called Incentivizing Food Systems Transformation. Okay. Um, and it's their food systems initiative, right? And they tell you in that document that one of the unfortunate consequences is that many farmers are going to lose their way of life. And what they're really telling you is that in order for us to take over, like someone right now, we can't have them running the food system. So when we go to take it over, clearly many of them are going to get discarded. And then, but also before this happened, here's the prime minister. All right, I believe it's Mark Rutte in the Netherlands. This was well before any food crisis or these latest legislative moves to eliminate nitrates. This is what
So the role of businesses in the agri-food sector should be stimulated and enabled to create scalable solutions. And here I'd like to highlight a World Economic Forum initiative in this regard, the World Economic Forum Food Innovation Hubs. And these hubs in Africa, in Asia, in South America and in Europe will allow businesses to connect regional stakeholders to skill innovations, because this is key, skill innovations that can address food systems challenges. And here I'm particularly proud to announce that the Netherlands will host the global coordinating secretariat of the World Economic Forum Food Innovation Hubs, which will connect all other food innovation hubs. And I believe this is important because it will be facilitating to create the partnerships we need.
So understand, I know, not everyone quickly grasps what the significance of that is. So when he made that announcement that he's basically joining the Netherlands into this food initiative with the WEF, okay? And this was well before any of this stuff started happening, okay? And he announced that he was joining him in because he's going to lead this food innovation hub process now and be the secretary and basically be the secretariat for it, okay? And keep in mind, if you're not aware, because I didn't know this, that the Netherlands is one of the top agricultural producers in the world. Okay, so it doesn't go unnoticed then to realize that they're the ones to hit first. Okay, they're warning now of now how much does this affect the United States? We don't know. Because a lot of it's going to have to do with how the United States people react and how they can react. Because if nitrates start getting banned, what are the farmers going to do? You can't just turn the switch off from fertilizer nitrates to organics. It doesn't work that way. There's a long piece on Epic TV where Joshua Phillip is talking with an agricultural scientist about this. It's a very calm, passive conversation, no real politics in general, just more the science of how that works, how a transition would work. And two things that were notable. One, you can't feed the world on organic, growing everything organic. You can't. There's too much loss of crop in order to do that. But number two, the other significant piece that I got out of that was the fact that the soil, okay? So soil, when they're using fertilizer, it's not a problem as long as they keep using it. It's not a problem, and you can continue to yield crops. It's basically taking the nitrates and giving them straight to the plant, okay? So you're giving the nitrates straight to the plant, which means you don't have to wait for the long process for that to happen with microbes and everything else to generate those nitrates again each time in the soil. It allows you to produce a ton more food, okay? Which made sense because we have a ton more people to feed. There's nothing wrong with the food. A nitrate is a nitrate, as the doctor said. He's like, it's not like a chemical. It's nitrates. He's like, they're nitrates. They occur. It's not. There's nothing wrong with it. But the process is different. So if you stop applying the nitrates the way that they do now, if these psychos just make it, all right, that's it, we're going to ban nitrates in fertilizer, Well, the soil is not going to just recover. It's not like it's just going to, oh, well, all right, then we just start planting without it. It doesn't work that way. It could take a year, 2 years for the soil to start recovering. And even then, even once it recovers, it's still, then you grow a round of crops in it, and you can't grow another round of crops in it immediately. You got to wait. And it's that waiting process that had human ingenuity produce these fertilizers so that we don't have to wait, so that we could keep growing. And they're going out of their way to disrupt this. So Sheila says, you're going to call out the metaverse. Sheila, I'm not sure. You mean in general? Is there something that just broke on metaverse? Because I have been working like a dog all day, and I've been dialed into WEF. So I'm not sure if something broke with metaverse. I know that's the metaverse is the whole not Bill Gates. They all start to blend together, don't they? The whole Zuckerberg fake reality nonsense where, that we're going to have to protect our kids from, by the way. That's I don't want to get too far off topic, but we're going to have to protect our kids from that. So it looks like this came from Jack because it's coming from the Patriot think tank. So I think Jack's watching today. U.S. Marshals just forced their way onto an Amish farm and gave them a cease and desist order from the FDA unless they update their processing equipment. Yeah, like this is the kind of stuff we're addressing with COS, folks, right? This is what convention is. This is the government overreach piece, right? This is the government and special place in hell for the U.S. Marshals that are doing that. I'm sorry. I love our cops. I support our sheriffs and everybody. But you know what? Like, I don't buy the I'm taking orders shit. Excuse my language. I don't buy the I'm taking orders. You're doing something that's completely inhumane and unjust. There's no reason to mess with the Amish. They mess with nobody, and they literally like churn their own butter. Like they do everything on their own. And now you're going to tell them that they got to shut down their farms come on. And you know what, though? It would not, because I know it's not the Marshals' fault, right? It's not like the Marshals were like, oh, well, somebody gave them that order, right? Somebody gave them that order. But that, like, what do you do if you're, like, it's like those guys that went in for these January 6 people, right? Where you see, like, the trucks and the battering rams and they're throwing flashbangs. It's a guy and his daughter, his 12-year-old daughter in a house. They're coming to get him like that. With like 12 people, they crash his back window in, storm in, throw handcuffs on his little kid. Like if you're one of those people, like if you're in that branch of the FBI, or you were on that team, like you're burning. You're going to burn. Like what goes around comes around. Like they gotta stop messing with these people. Like at some point, and I love our sheriff, in Riverside, California, in the county of Riverside, which is enormous. When they started doing these lockdowns and telling businesses you can't do this, you can't do that, or people do this, people do that, and they're trying to like get people they're trying to get the police to take action against civilians for not wearing masks and all this. Like, he's so badass. He came out on a Facebook post and was like, listen, he's like, I want everyone to know that I ain't enforcing any of that stuff. He was like, I ain't enforcing any of it. He goes, I am not the governor's muscle. He's like, to start harassing innocent citizens over nonsense. And he basically left it at that. And then there was this pancake house that opened up prior to being technically allowed to. And they asked the sheriff, they said, well, are you going to do anything? And he was like, this is California, folks. And he says, well, he goes, I'm not going to do anything. He's like, I can't protect you from the state guys. He's like, but no one from the county has a problem with it. Like, we're not going to disrupt. If people want to go eat there, let them go eat there. We had nothing to do with it. That's how I expect responsible law enforcement to act. That when you're asked to be a Nazi, you don't turn around and do it and just say, I'm taking orders. Like, that's not cool. Everybody out there is taking, you know how many millions of people either lost their job or took pay cuts or have been seriously financially disrupted because they were pushing back on this stuff? Like, I don't see law enforcement as any different. And when they do stuff like now you're picking on the Amish, come on. It's not like, I don't know. I don't even know where to go with that. But you know what? if it's farming that they had the problem with, though, I see where Jack's going with it, because even the Amish are not safe. And this explains the Bill Gates buying all this farmland, which made no sense. People going, oh, it's good to, like Ben Shapiro's like saying, this is what the wealthy do. They buy assets. When I'm like, no, it's not. Like, yes, they buy assets. Yes, he's correct. When interest rates are this and that, they buy assets. I get that. They don't buy farmland. There's so many assets out there that he could invest in, but he picked farmland. And he just happens to be knee deep in this madness. And it's not just in the U.S. He's buying farmland all over the world. All right. But like, the point is, he just happens to be like all of these coincidences. Like, there's just an element of coincidence. Like, we know what they're planning to do. That's not a tying. You don't have to tie anything together with that. They tell you, and we will tell you as we go through their websites. But like, in the end, you have to understand what's good. Like, people have to open their eyes to what's going on, because, and I'm gonna pop up the one document I was telling you about. So if you want to go look it up, this is the one. You could find this also if you just Google or DuckDuckGo. If you just look, I Googled it. It came up pretty. WEF I Googled because Google loves the WEF, and I pulled this up under Food Innovation Hubs, and when you actually go to that link on the site, and do I have that up here? Let me see. See if I can show you that. So here's the Food Innovation Hubs. Okay, this is all World Economic Forum website. There's nothing. There's nothing crazy here. All right. Well, actually, there's a lot crazy here. But when you read this stuff, like, I encourage you to go through it before we do the videos. And I'm debating if I should do them live or if I should just put them together as produced videos. But, I may do them live because I may want to get people's reaction, as we go through it. It's just that it's a little more to coordinate when you're doing it live. I don't get the opportunity to edit and play with it. So, but, nonetheless, I also like the idea, though, of engaging with you guys while we go through it, because there'll be questions, right? There'll be things people want to ask, and there'll be stuff, there'll be stuff out there. And then Jack says, again, Bill Gates has been data mining agriculture and taking that data and patenting seed production. It appears his long-term goal is to force agriculture to purchase his seeds. I don't know that, I mean, it could be. I mean, look, we don't know for sure what his goal is. I just know that, to me, I don't think it's a money play. I don't think that it's, I think it's a money play, but it's a different kind of money play. Like, it's not like your traditional, you're going to invest and then you get this and then you do that and then you get a return and you dividend. Like, I don't think it's like that. Like, I think this is a money play where when these guys win, and this is what corporate America is doing right now, is they're hedging their bets that these guys are going to win. Like, if you're wondering why corporate America is so, so woke and so obviously woke and like embarrassingly woke, like, if you wonder about that, the reason for that is that they're hedging their bets that WEF is going to win. That's what they're doing. Sorry, I got to get rid of this. All right, they're hedging their bets that the WEF is going to win. And they're not, if you're corporate America, you kind of have to. You kind of have to. Because you're looking at it and you're saying, all right, Republicans are either weak or they're also in on the game. Right? Like, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz could yell and scream all they want. There's a handful of others out there. They could yell and scream all they want, but in the end, there's enough Republicans that are on the team here that, I mean, we got, what's his name? The guy with the patch. He's one of the WEF's young leaders. He was recognized as one of their young and up-and-coming leaders. And then he's on a video talking about how it's all conspiracy. I'm like, really? Really? Like, this is where we're at now. Like, there is no elected official, period, that I trust. Yeah, there might be a couple that I at least trust to have the good intention, and actually even Manchin, who's a Democrat. Like, I wouldn't vote for the guy, but he seems to at least make common sense. He's like the one stopping them from. He's a huge monkey wrench in the cogs for these people. Huge monkey wrench. Said live. That's right. We're live. Unless there's something else going on live that I'm. Oh, are you saying that last thing? You're at the metaverse? I'm not sure. Anyway, so, again, my goal is really just to make everyone aware and get everyone, get you guys reading on your own, get you guys out there looking into stuff on your own, and just, and then tying that in with what we're telling you, and then let's have the conversation about it, right? Like I'm going to continue to sift through this WEF website regardless, but in the end, whether it's me telling you or showing you, what's on this crazy site, or you're out there, digging up stuff on your own. And hey, throw stuff in the comments if you got stuff that's pertinent, on these issues. Throw stuff in the comments. But I definitely wanted to make the connection right now between the importance of convention of states and what these sociopaths are trying to do, and how one negates the other. They cannot do what they want to do. It's impossible. Now, there are the states could all revolt, and there's all kinds of crazy stuff that can happen, but convention of states is an orderly process that will fix this stuff, that will fix the issues that it's right now designed to address permanently. All right, permanently. So the issues that are on the table now are term limits for all federal officials, okay? That includes SCOTUS, that includes friggin' staffers, deep state, that creepy dude who sits in a black suit with the black sunglasses and hands over the black budget that's all redacted that they pass anyway. That guy, gone. Like, they're all gone. The dude with the keys to the alien house in Area 51 that won't tell any presidents about it. That guy, he's done. He's done. You've been around too long. That's it. That's it. Now we're going to go visit the aliens. That's it. All these people got to get out of there, right? We're gonna open this thing up, and we're gonna start being free again. We're gonna start being free again, right? No more of this Marxist madness in our schools, where the NEA is making enemy lists of our freaking of our parents of good, like, honest American parents of all colors, creeds, etc. that are just upset that they're teaching racism and sexualizing middle schoolers. Like, that, those are people that you put on an enemy list. This is the world we're living in? No. Board of Education, the Department of Education, done. Right? You want to slap napkins on everybody's face? OSHA, done. Done. These are the major issues that get addressed. Okay? And there's nothing that the federal government is doing that cannot be run by the states. Nothing. Except the military, right? Which is a power that they're supposed to have. That's a power given to the federal government in the Constitution, as are the borders. And they're not even doing that. They're not even upholding that. The few responsibilities they're supposed to have, they're screwing up. But in the end, that's what we're here for. We're here to help. We're going to take the rest of that stuff, take it all off their plate, and let them focus on those few things that they're supposed to be focused on, right? Right? They're going to say, oh, well, we need regulatory agencies because there's just too much to do to legislate everything. No, there isn't. Not when you start doing only what is assigned to you, the powers that are assigned to you in the Constitution. There really isn't all that much to do. You're going to have plenty of time on your hands. Maybe they could even find time to visit the border. But, like, in the end, I don't know, it drives me nuts. So Sheila's saying COS needs volunteers. So, folks, if you've got any time, right, anytime, and even if you don't have time per se, you can still contribute. All right, you can be, a social media warrior. There are things you could do, right? But the first thing you need to do, if you're not already on board, because I know a lot of the people, we get a lot of viewers, and many of them are already on board. But like, if you're not already on board, all right, you can go to the website, register for conventionestates.com, and register, sign the petition, all right, which I believe is the same process. And then you register as you sign. They'll send a letter on your behalf to your representative, and they'll introduce you to COS University, which is really a series of videos that don't just teach COS, but they also just educate you on the Constitution, period. And really, everybody should do that. Like, we find time to watch Netflix, we find time to watch Apple TV or Hulu or whatever. Take a little time to learn about the Constitution, because the government, in another one of its epic fails, and unfortunately it was by design, stopped teaching civics forever ago. And there are many generations, well beyond Generation X, that never truly learned civics. So like people, we've gone through our lives thinking we know the Constitution, thinking we know what the intent of the founders were, thinking we know these things, but we don't. We don't. And even I, who thought that I was really versed on it, then I came across Convention of States about a year and a half ago and was like, holy crap, how did I not even know? How did I not even know that this was possible? How does Rudy Giuliani not know? You know why? Because it's never been used. That's why. It's never been used, and that's the reason that, and frankly, to some people, that's what scares them. This has never been used before. Well, it's never been needed before. It only has one purpose, right? Convention of States, there's only one reason to call a convention, really, when you think about it. And that's to restrict the power of the federal government. There's anything else we could let the federal government do. Like the 14th Amendment, we can let the federal government do that. We don't need to to call a convention for that. There's no need. But when it comes time to restrict the power of the federal government, really, you think they're gonna do it to themselves? I mean, Mason brought this up in the original Constitutional Convention. They're not going to do it to themselves. That's common sense. They're not going to impose term limits on themselves, right? They're not going to do it. They're not going to take the power of the purse out of their own hands. They're not going to do it. That's the core of how they pay off these. That's how they pay back these freaking companies. You give us all this money in donation, and then we slip it back to you in tax breaks. I mean, that's the game. It can't end that. And then what do you mean you're not going to let the president, just usurp Congress and use regulatory agencies to create laws? We need that possibility. They're never gonna pass these things. You think senators are gonna vote to abolish the 17th Amendment? Really? You think that's gonna happen? We're the only ones that are gonna do this, folks. It's us. It's all up to us. And in the end, once we do it, once we get her done, the world has changed. 250 years from now, they're going to be talking about, the Mark Mecklers of the world and the Mark Levins and everybody who's been supporting, and all the grassroots people. You're going to see photos of rallies, photos of marches, things like that. You're going to see all that stuff because it's going to go down as the day the American people took back liberty and set a new precedent as to who exactly is the parent in this relationship. Right. So stay tuned, folks. Stay tuned for the for that series coming out. I know Jack has some stuff coming up too. But I just wanted to, since he didn't jump on today, I'm stealing the stage and just talking about my stuff. but anyway, so I do have the WEF series. It should be fun. I will come on live about it as well. I'm toggling over whether it's going to be live or produced. If I produce it, I might still come on live and just discuss it after it gets released, just to kind of get people, give people an idea of what that website is about and how that game is being played. So hopefully it'll give you some material even if you're fully aware and you've read the website, it might give you some material to send over to someone who hasn't. to just give them, to that person who's like, they're not going to do that. That's not what they're doing, to that person. So you can send over and show them, look, this is what's on their site, man. It's there. You can go find it as well. And I'll include whatever links that I go to in there. As a matter of fact, I will put right now. Oh, no, it won't let me. Yeah, it won't let me add a comment to Facebook. We the people decide. Absolutely. It won't let me add a comment to Facebook. But what I'm going to do, actually, it turned off my message sending altogether. That's kind of whack. I'm not sure what happened there. But anyway, I'll when I start putting out the videos, I'll put links to all the stuff. And but you can see it was called Incentivizing Food System Transformation. That's a PDF document that you'll pull up, and it'll, when you read it, you're gonna, it's like midway through before it starts to get super creepy. But like, they put up these like charts of like what the government's role is, what the citizens' role is, what the private sector, meaning large corporations' role is, and here's an idea of some stuff that they say. They're like, so for the government, must be different. So the government, they basically say, use tax policy to control behavior. Like, they straight out say it. It's like nuts. That's what we were talking about with the modern monetary theory, where she's just straight saying like, well, if we can print as much as we want, why do we need taxes? They say. And she's like, really? We don't. We use it to control behavior. I was like, I appreciate your honesty, but you need to go away. Like, so, but we'll get into it all. We'll break it all down in those future videos, folks. It looks like we got through a damage-free session here. So I appreciate the comments from everybody. Thank you so much. Please make sure you share. I'm going to snip, if you haven't noticed, like maybe a half hour or so after the Facebook one drops, I snip off the ticker. So, if you haven't shared it already, you want to share that one, fine. Otherwise, just share it now. Whatever. They can fast forward past the ticker. It's no big deal. But I do appreciate you folks. Again, to our YouTube people, we're still soaring on YouTube. So despite the fact that we've got like a 20% click rate, and like we end up getting like 12 views from that, which is crazy. Like how does that? That's like all 12 are from like a quick. If people were really clicking at that rate, how it's nuts. Anyway, once we started going Great Reset, they're not big fans, and I understand why. But nonetheless, they can't. When you guys get engaged, things go viral. So go ahead, shoot it out, share to your friends, encourage them to get in the conversation. We'll be back next Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, every Wednesday. Follow us. If you're on YouTube, click the bell. You'll get the alerts, and you'll know when we're on. Until then, I'm out.
And like that,